Okay. Now you can.
Now I can? Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Yeah, I see. I can do it now.
Okay, fine.
Okay, can everyone hear me well? Rabbi Katz, can you hear me well?
I hear excellent, every word.
Amazing. Okay, shkoyach Rabbi Katz. It's been amazing, Jarchei Kallo. So many participants. It's amazing to see how everyone's been coming together to learn Torah. I would like to try, like it said on the title, to go through quite a complex inyan, quite a complex subject, which is, what is a goy allowed to do for you on Shabbos? Now, obviously, I can't cover everything. It's a huge subject, but we're going to try and discuss some practical ideas about this subject. And I'm going to try and go through the sugya with you to see where it comes from in Gemara, in Halacha. And the two practical things that I was thinking of is a person has a secretary. A lot of business people have secretaries. For instance, in the Chuvas Forum, it's brought down a lot about a lawyer having a secretary. Now, what is a secretary allowed to do for you on Shabbos? Or is a secretary allowed to do any work for you on Shabbos? That's number one. And what is more well-known and more accepted, a lot of people have, is cleaners in the house on Shabbos. What is a cleaner allowed to do for me on Shabbos? Or is a cleaner allowed to do any melacha for me on Shabbos? And with all these things, obviously, it starts from a sugya. We're going to start off with a Gemara, and I've got the Gemara here that I want to share with you on my screen. We're going to go through it. Whoever would like to follow the Gemara from the screen is very welcome to do so. The Gemara says the following. I'm starting from the Gemara on the third to top line. The Gemara says, Tanya, I have a brisa. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Oimer, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, Loi yiskoir Adam merchotzoi le'oived kechovim. A person should not rent his bathhouse to a goy, to a non-Jew. Now, I always find it easier to talk about nowadays. It's not so common, a bathhouse, so I would like to use this terms of merchotzoi, a bathhouse, and use a term of a pool, a swimming pool. So let's call it, a person shouldn't rent out his swimming pool to a non-Jew. Why? Because everyone knows that the swimming pool belongs to a Yid. For instance, everyone knows that this swimming pool belongs to Reuven the Yid. And the Oived Kechovim there, and this goy, this non-Jew, Oiseboy Malacha b'Shabbosos, he's doing work on Shabbos in the swimming pool. So I've given over the swimming pool to him, and I've told him that he could take in all his clients who want to come swimming. All his people who he has who want to enjoy the swimming pool, he'll allow them in, and he's got bailas, he's got ownership over the swimming pool. So everyone sees this guy doing malacha in the swimming pool on Shabbos. And on Yom Tov as well, on Yom Tov as well, the same halacha applies. And therefore, because people see that the goy is doing malacha in the swimming pool on Shabbos, says the Gemara, says Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, a person should not do it because it looks wrong. It looks like that the Yid has told the goy to actually go and do the work for him. People see the goy doing work, and therefore it looks like somehow, because the swimming pool has the name, everyone knows this swimming pool belongs to the Jew, belongs to the Yid. So it looks like it looks wrong. People will think that the goy is actually working for the Yid. That's number one. Just if you could jump a couple of lines in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, Aval Sadehu, when it comes to a field, Lo'oivit kechovim mai. Am I allowed to rent my field to a goy for Shabbos? Maybe I even do it for a few days, whatever it is, but I rent my field to a goy. Am I allowed to? Says the Gemara, Shori, it is permitted. I'm allowed to. My Tama, what's the reason? Why suddenly by a field am I allowed to rent it out to a non-Jew? Says the Gemara, the reason is Arisa Arisuse Ka'ovid. Suddenly.
Where's this Gemara?
Oh, sorry. This Gemara is an Avodah Zarah that Chof Aleph Amud Beis.
Okay, shkoyach.
Sorry. The Gemara is that Chof Aleph Amud Beis in Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says that when it comes to a field, I'm allowed to give it out to a goy. I'm allowed to rent it to a non-Jew. What's the reason? Suddenly the Gemara jumps and the Gemara brings in this concept of an oris, which we'll see soon what an oris means. And the Gemara says that an oris, when he does his work in the field, he's doing his own work. Arisuse ka'ovid. He's doing his own work, his own personal work in the field. That's what it means. Arisuse ka'ovid. He's doing his own agriculture in the field. He's taking care of the field. And that's why it's allowed. Ask the Gemara, but merchat, when it comes to a swimming pool, nami omri. We should also say arisa arisuse ka'ovid. Maybe we should say the same svara, the same logic. That yes, he's doing his own work. Why don't we look at the non-Jew and give him the same category as we give the non-Jew in the field? Just like the non-Jew in the field has a category of an oris, and we say he's doing his own work, so too by the swimming pool. When I rent out the swimming pools, and I tell the guy he can do what he likes with the swimming pool, it's his. He can rent it out to people, he can rent it out to groups, he can rent it out to schools, he can rent it out to families, and also he's doing his own work. Why don't we say the same svara? Says the Gemara the following: Arisa the merchat loy of the insha. When it comes to this concept of oris, by a swimming pool, by a bathhouse, people do not do that. It's not the regular thing. That's not how people used to rent out their swimming pools. People do not rent out the swimming pools in the way of an oris. However, when it comes to a field, people do rent it out in the way of an oris. People do use the concept of oris. They do rent out the field with a contract of arisos, and therefore it's permitted. Now, firstly, we have to understand what is this concept of arisos, what does it mean an oris, and what is the concept that the Gemara says that you can't rent out a bathhouse, a swimming pool, to a goy, to a non-Jew on Shabbos. What else is he doing? How else is he renting out the swimming pool to the goy? What's on the contract? What sort of contract has he made with the goy if it's not arisos? So let's first get clear what arisos is, and then get clear what's the Gemara discussing when it comes to telling us that you're not allowed to rent out your swimming pool to a goy. Which type of a contract has he made with the goy that the Gemara is referring to and saying that he can't do it on Shabbos and Yom Tov? So, if you take a look at this, the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Reish Mem Gimel tells us very clearly that there's three concepts that a person has to take into consideration when we're talking about renting things out to a goy, getting a goy to work for you. And this whole parasha, this whole subject, there's three inyonim, three sections that belong to this concept. And from here, let's see what the three concepts are, and then go back to the Gemara. So I'm going to begin reading the beginning of the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah tells us the following: Da, you should know, sheshloisha chilukim yesh. There's three sections, there's three departments, there's three different types of contracts when it comes to getting a goy to work for you on Shabbos. Yesh echad who one is arisos, right? That's arisos we just saw in the Gemara. What does that mean? Shesoicha eina Yehudi, he rents the non-Jew. Sheyaseh hamalacha b'sadeh, that he should do work in the field, oy b'merchat, or in the swimming pool. The haravachim, and the profits, oy hapeiros, or the fruit, which that is the profit of a field. Yachloiku, they have a division. The division could be anything. It doesn't have to be a division of 50-50. It could be a division of 40-30, or 40-60, 70-30. It doesn't make a difference. But the way it works is, I rent the goy. I tell the goy, I'm making a contract with you that you should work in this field. And your wage, the way I'm going to pay you the wage, will be by getting a certain percentage in the profit of this bathhouse, this pool, or this field. That's number one. Number two, there's another type. Habes hu schiros she'eno Yehudi noitel kol haravochim. I rent the goy and I tell him he gets all the profits. Oy haperos, he gets all the fruit. V'noisein li Yisrael, and he gives to the Jew avu sodeu before his field or merchotzoy, for his bathhouse, for his pool. Dovar kotzuv l'chol shana. What does that mean? I tell the goy, I own a swimming pool. I'm a rich man. I have a swimming pool. I have a big swimming pool. I'm going to rent this out to you. I'm charging you 100,000 euros for the next year to rent this swimming pool, and you're in charge. You're the boss. You take care of the whole thing. All the profits go to you. Anyone who rents the swimming pool from now on, all the money goes to you. As long as at the end of the year, you give me 100,000 euros. Clear? So we've got two concepts. And it is clear from all the Mefarshim that when going back to the Gemara that we just bought, that when the Gemara said that a field, one is allowed to rent a goy, one is allowed to hire a goy in order to work in the field for you, the normal way they used to rent a goy to work in the field was to tell the goy, listen, the planting, I've got to get it all done. And by the end of the whole term, I'm going to give you 40% of the payros. I'm going to give you 40% of the profit. And that is perfectly allowed on Shabbos. There's no problem. I can rent the goy with a contract of arisos, and the goy is perfectly allowed, peacefully allowed to go and work in the field on Shabbos. And the reason is because he's working on his own accord. I've only rented him that he has to get the job done. He has to get the sowing done, the plowing, the sowing, the planting, etc., etc. And at the end of the term, at the end of the whole work, we split up. He gets 40, I get 60. So when he works on Shabbos, that's his own decision. He's deciding when he wants to work. Does he want to work in the week? Does he want to work on Shabbos? So that's why we say that in that case, it's perfectly allowed. And therefore, going back to the Gemara, when the Gemara says that a sodeh, when it comes to a field, the Gemara says I'm allowed to get a goy to come and work there because no one will ever think that I'm doing something wrong, because everyone knows that the way the goy has been contracted and the normal way that the goy has been is contracted in normal circumstances is varisos, is in this way that I get him to do the job, and I split up the profit at the end of the day with him. So that's very clear. That's by field. Now, going back to a merchat, going back to a swimming pool, a bathhouse. So it's clear again from all the Mefarshim, from all the commentaries, from all the explanations, that when the Gemara said, I'm not allowed to rent out a bathhouse to a goy, to a non-Jew on Shabbos, the Gemara was talking about the second case we brought in the Mishnah Berurah, that I'm renting the goy to do all the work for me. He has to take care of all the work, and also he takes all the profit. So I'm renting him the bathhouse. It's actually as if it's his bathhouse for the next year. It's his swimming pool for the next year. He has to bring me in at the end of the year 100,000 euros, and all the profit goes to him. Now, this is nothing compared. We cannot compare this to arisos, or we said before that you make a division in the profit. This is the goy getting all the profit, and I am going to get the fixed amount that I made up with the goy in the contract. At the end of the year, this is what I'm going to get. Now, on this, going back to the Gemara in Avodah Zarah that we saw before, the Gemara tells us this is not allowed, because once you're dealing with renting stuff, once you're dealing with schiros, you have to always take into consideration that there might be another thing. When people see that you're dealing with schiros, people look at it and people might know that you're dealing with schiros, you're dealing with renting a goy, you're not dealing with arisos, where you're getting a division in the profit. You're dealing with schiros, you're dealing with someone renting the goy, hiring the goy to do work for you. Says the Gemara, even though in this case, where I've given over the swimming pool entirely to the goy, I've given it all over to him. So from my point of view, he doesn't have to work on Shabbos. he gets profit. Wherever he works, he gains. If he doesn't work, he loses. I get 100,000 euros at the end of the year. So says the Gemara, really, it should be allowed. What's the reason that it's not allowed? Because, says the Gemara, when you're dealing with schiros, when you're dealing with hiring, there's another option that you have to take into consideration, which is called schir yoim. A schir yoim means to say that I rent the goy to do work for me, and I pay him daily or I pay him hourly. I say to him, every hour I'm going to give you 30 euros. You work an hour, I'll give you 30 euros. You work 2 hours, I'll give you 60. Or you pay him daily. You say to him, I give you 100 euros a day. So he works for me 1 day is 100 euros, 2 days, 200 euros. And that is forbidden medina. There's nothing to talk about but the case of a schir yoim. When I rent a goy to work for me, I rent him on Wednesday and I tell him, listen, every day you work for me, you get 100 euros. That is also medina. You're not allowed to take a goy to work for you in that case. Because then when the goy works for you on Shabbos, he's literally working for you to gain his profit at the end of the day. And that case is definitely forbidden. So therefore, says the Gemara, that when we're dealing with schiros, even though we're not dealing with a schir yoim, we're not dealing with a contract where you've rented the goy, you've hired the goy to work for you on a daily basis, and you pay him on a daily basis. You rented the goy that we're looking at the entire year. We're looking at the whole year, and you're telling him, listen, you have to pay me 100,000 euro whether you work in there or not. So logically, you could say the goy adata the nafshei, when he worked on Shabbos, he was working from his own accord. But says the Gemara that it's no good. Why? Because when you're dealing with schiros, people might think there's a maris ayin that it looks like you're dealing with schir yoim. People might think you're dealing with schir yoim. And if you're dealing with schir yoim, it's also medina. So in other words, you're going to cause confusion. You're going to it's going to look like you're doing something wrong and you're doing something that's also medina on Shabbos. Now, those are the two concepts that we have seen here in the Mishnah Berurah, and we've mentioned another concept which is schir yoim. Now, if you look in the Mishnah Berurah we were reading before, so the Mishnah Berurah goes, let's continue the Mishnah Berurah a few more lines, and the Mishnah Berurah just explains the dinim, and then we'll see a third concept, actually a fourth concept in the Mishnah Berurah, which the Mishnah Berurah calls it a third concept, but we mentioned already a third one, so we'll call this a fourth concept. The Mishnah Berurah says, let's continue where we actually finished off from. And the Mishnah Berurah says that the base chilukim elu, these two differences that we just discussed, that was either that you made a contract with a goy, that the goy is going to get a division in the profit, or the contract with the goy was that he's renting out the whole swimming pool and he has to pay me a fixed amount every single year. Says the Mishnah Berurah, these two are mutarim, they're allowed. The soder in a field, legamli. When it comes to a field, they're totally allowed. Why? Because in a field, everyone knows, no one's going to ever think that you're doing a schir yoim. There's no maris ayin. No one will get confused. Everyone knows that a field never works with schir yoim. So there's no maris ayin. But b'merachat, when it comes to a swimming pool, rak medina, then it's only osina. The ain't Yehudi, because really we should say that if the goy is renting it, that he's paying a fixed amount every single year, then adata the nafshei of it. Really, the goy is doing it from his own accord. Elo shechachomim osru. The Chachomim said it's forbidden. Elu beis hachalukim. These two different types of ways of doing it. But when it comes to a swimming pool, mishum maris ayin v'pnei nikras al shemoy. Because everyone knows that this swimming pool belongs to a Jew, belongs to a Yid. They all know this is Reuven's swimming pool. This is a special swimming pool that Reuven made, and he set it up in a nice way that people could go there, and everyone knows this is his swimming pool. So the Gemara says, and the Mishnah Berurah explains it, and it's forbidden because of maris ayin, because everyone knows that it belongs to the Jew. And everyone will come to say, the deed that the goy is doing it, the non-Jew is doing it, shlichus, as a messenger of the Yid, because the derech would normally be that you would rent out a swimming pool b'schir yoim. So it doesn't matter the fact that you're actually doing it now in an oifan haheta, you're doing it in a way that it should really be permitted because the goy adat the nafshei of it. The guy is doing it from his own accord. People will think, no, it's probably schir yoim, and they will come to be choishes. They'll come to say that they'll come to accuse the goy of accuse the Yid of doing something wrong on Shabbos. Now let's jump now to the third one, which for us is a fourth concept. Aval hachaluka hagimel, the hu kablonus. There's something else called kablonus. The hainu sheyiyu kol haravochem liYisrael. So we've discussed now a case where you contract the goy that he gets a division in the profit. We've discussed the case that the goy gets all the profit. Now we're going to discuss a case. The way it works is, I tell the goy, you've got to give me 100,000 euros every year. I tell the goy that I'm going to pay you every single month. I'm going to pay you 1,000 euros for taking care of my swimming pool. But at the end of the day, all the profit is going to come to me. I'm going to get all the profit. Now, this case already where it gets more tricky, because you can't say, not everyone could say that the goy is definitely working from his own accord. Because the goy is working for the Yid, really. The goy doesn't get the profit. Who gets the profit? The Yid gets the profit. So it looks like, and it could look very well, that maybe this is like Scheyoim. This is like the case that we mentioned that is forbidden. And this case has a machloikas, is an argument between the Magen Avraham and the Taz, the Turei Zor, in Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Simon Reish Mem Gimel, very close to the beginning of Hilchos Shabbos. The Magen Avraham and the Taz argue in this case where the Yid is renting the goy and he's telling him, I'm going to pay you every month. Or he tells him yearly, I'm going to pay you 12,000 euros a year if you work and do all the work in my field, but all the profit is to me. All the profit is coming to me. In this case, the Taz says that it's not also Medina. He says on the end of the day, you've rented over the goy to do the work for the entire month, and the goy at this moment has taken on all the work, so to a certain degree he's doing it from his own accord now. I'm not commanding him obviously to go in on Shabbos. That will definitely be forbidden. That is for sure forbidden. If I command him and I tell him seriously, you've got to go in on Shabbos, and I'm makbid on you, and we'll see this chiluk later on, we'll see this idea later on, that if I'm makbid on a goy to go and do the work on Shabbos, definitely also, definitely forbidden. The thing is, I told him here, I've not instructed him, I've not directly instructed him that he has to go and do the work on Shabbos. Then says the Taz, it's still permitted. But, again, if you're dealing with a swimming pool, there's a maras ayin. People will think that it might be a scheyoim, because a scheyoim is also Medina, and a swimming pool, the derech, the normal way to do it was, the normal way to rent it out, the normal way to contract a goy would be via scheyoim. The normal way and the derech was that you used to give, and it could be, by the way, even if you're making up a sum of money, and I'm telling the goy that I'm going to pay you 1,000 euros for the entire month, but if that amount that I'm making up with the goy is made up of a calculation of how many days he's going to work, and I'm going to tell him, listen, if you cancel one day, then I'm going to take off the money. At the end of the month, I'm going to deduct from the wage. That is also scheyoim. That is also nechshav as scheyoim, because I'm calculating every single day for its own. I'm calculating every single day for its own, then I'm looking at Shabbos on its own as well. And then it's also Medina as well, because then it's like the goy is working for me on Shabbos. So therefore, says the Taz, even though in this case, where I've actually told him that I'm going to pay him, I'm going to pay him monthly, or I'm going to pay him yearly, every yearly. Annually, I'm going to pay him a certain amount, but I haven't calculated how many days he's going to work. The wage is not coming through a calculation of how many days he's going to work. Then says the Taz that there's only a maras ayin. Medina, it will be permitted. Why? Says the Taz, at the end of the day, you've contracted him for the month. You're not looking at the days. And therefore, when the days that he works is all adat v'nafshei to a certain level, it's adat v'nafshei, which is a big chiddush of the Taz, that he looks at it adat v'nafshei, he looks at it in that way, he views it in that way, and he says it's the goy doing from his own accord. But when it comes to a merchat, it comes to a swimming pool, that will still be awesome maras ayin, because people look at it and people will think automatically that the derech Merchatz is done is with Scheyoi. However, the Magen Avraham tells us, no, the Magen Avraham goes the simple way. And he says, in this case, it's going to be forbidden Medina, not just the Maras Ayin. Legally, like al pi choik, al pi law, al pi din Torah, it will be usher to rent out a goy and tell the goy that I'm paying you €1,000 a month, but all the profit is coming to me. Because he says in that case, every single day is another cheshbon. I'm going to be losing out on profit if the goy doesn't work on Shabbos. And the opposite, lehefech as well. If the goy works on Shabbos, I'm getting profit. Says the Magen Avraham, then I'm literally gaining from Shabbos. There is Schar Shabbos involved. I'm literally gaining from him working for me on Shabbos. Therefore, says the Magen Avraham, this Chalukah Gimel that the Mishnah Berurah brought, this third idea that the Mishnah Berurah brought, that all the profit is going to the Yid. Only the Yid tells the Goy, I'm paying you a fixed amount per year. Annually, I'm paying you 12,000 euros. Says the Magen Avraham, that's also Medina. So we had 4 cases, and I want to just share on the screen a quick summary of these 4 cases, because these 4 cases for the continuation of the Shia is very important. Oh, what's going on here? Sorry. Sorry, if everyone can take a look at this, there's 4 chilukim that we just discussed, and they're very important 4 chilukim to get clear on if we would like to have clarity in the rest of the shir. Let's go through it very quickly. The first one we discussed was Chiros. The Yid is renting the entire bathhouse to the non-Jew. The whole thing is his. He's in control. He can do what he wants. He has to take care of cleaning it. Now the profit is all to the non-Jew. The whole profit is to the Goy. However, he pays me a certain amount per year. That's the main thing you've got to know. In this case, all the profit is going to the Goy. And if all the profit's going to the Goy, then really it should be permitted Medina. Only from Maras Ayin we say there's a problem. Because the normal derech to rent out a bathhouse would be b'schei yoim, when it comes to the last case on this page, which is schei yoim. Another case we discussed, another concept we discussed was arisos. Arisos means the Yid rents the non-Jew as a worker to do all the work. So he says, Mr. Goy, you've got to do all the work. Yeah, and as a payment, and his payment is a percentage in the profit. Meaning the Goy will get a percentage in the profit. So if you talk about a field, the Goy will get a percentage in the field as a payment. So that's what we wrote here. The profit is shared by the Yid and the non-Jew. And that's the very important point when it comes to arisos. That the profit is shared by the Yid and the non-Jew, and therefore it's nothing to do with me that the Goy works on Shabbos. He's really working for his own profit. And that's a little bit of the chiddush that we should also mention over here, that when it comes to arisos, even though the Yid is actually gaining, and to a certain degree he's gaining, I mean, he's not properly gaining, because at the end of the day, the Goy has to do the job, whether it's on Shabbos or not, and if the Goy doesn't work on Shabbos, he'll have to take care of his job after Shabbos. But to a certain degree, there is a certain gain happening on Shabbos. But we say, since the Goy is getting profit from it as well, so we can call that adata denafshe of it. We can call that he's working on his own accord, and therefore we don't take into consideration the Yid, the Jew's profit. Those are the first 2 cases. Now the next case, I think actually we should jump to the last case. The last case is schei yoim. The profit is all to the Yid. And that's the main thing over here, that the profit is entirely to the Yid. However, the Yid rents the non-Jew to do his work, but pays him an hourly or daily wage, which this point is very important over here when it comes to a schei yoim, because since the Goy is rented on an hourly wage or a daily wage, therefore if he actually doesn't work one day, he'll be deducted from his wage. He'll get less, he'll be making less profit that much. He'll be making less, his wage will be shorter, his wage will be smaller. So it's very clear in that case that the Goy is working for the Yid. Going back to the third case, which is Kabbalos. That was the case that we said was the Mechoikes Magen Avraham and Taz. Then we said the profit goes entirely to the Yid. Everything's for the Yid. And that's why it makes it trouble. That's why it makes it problematic. The Yid simply rents the non-Jew to do all the work for him. The Yid is actually renting the non-Jew, is renting the Goy to do all the work. And he says, I'm going to pay him weekly, monthly, or yearly wage. It doesn't matter. I can pay him weekly, I can pay him monthly, but I'm still telling him that it's not a daily wage. It's not a wage based on how many days you're working. It's a wage based on how many weeks you're working, how many months you're working. So we're not calculating Shabbos as a day for itself. We're calculating Shabbos as part of the entire week. We're calculating Shabbos as part of the whole month or part of the whole year. In this case, we said, very important now to remember, because we're continuing now from this case, that we're going to continue now from this case, that there's a Machlokes Magen Avraham and Taz. The Taz says in this case, it's only awesome for Maras Ayin. Why, says the Taz, at the end of the day, I've rented him for the entire month, and I'm not looking at Shabbos for itself. I've rented him for the whole month, and I've said to him, listen, I'm going to pay you 1,000 euros if you work for me, and that was the deal. And the Goy is simply going in on Shabbos to take on his achraya, take on his responsibility that he's given, that he's going to work for the Yid. So says the Taz, that will be mutter from Medina. However, Maras Ayin, because the general way, the normal way, that a bathhouse, a swimming pool was rented out, was normally with the Schei Yoim, which is the last one on this page. Then he says, therefore it will be forbidden from Maras Ayin. However, the Magen Avraham tells us that this case of kablonos, when it comes to a bathhouse, when it comes to a swimming pool, will be also Medina, will be forbidden. There's nothing to talk about, will be forbidden, because at the end of the day, he says that when it comes to a swimming pool, every single day that the Goy works is a profit for the Yid. This is the case of kablonos. Kablonos is a case where the Yid gets all the profit. Profit is all to the Yid. Just the Goy gets a wage for working. Since the Goy gets a wage for working and the profit is all to the Yid, so we look at Shabbos for itself. If the Goy doesn't work on Shabbos, then the profit will be lost to the Yid. And if he does work on Shabbos, then the Goy will get profit. The Yid will get profit. And therefore, says the Magen Avraham, that is already a real Schar Shabbos. It doesn't just look like, it might not just be a problem of Maras Ayin, it's a real problem of Schar Shabbos. It's a problem of getting a Goy to work for you on Shabbos. The Goy is bringing you profit from Shabbos. And that's why the Magen Avraham says it's also Medina. By the way, before we carry on, it's an interesting thing that in this case of kablonos, where we said that the Magen Avraham holds, the Magen Avraham is of the opinion that it is forbidden Medina. It's of Pidyon Torah, it's also because it's Schar Shabbos. When it comes to a field is always different, because a field would actually be permitted. Because a field, the way that you rent workers to do work in a field, you tell them, listen, this is the job. You've got to do plowing, you've got to do sowing, you've got to do planting, you've got to do harvesting. You've got to do the job. I'm going to pay you for the job. When you do the job, I don't care. You could do the job in the next 6 months, and you could do it in Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You can do it whenever you want. So when he goes in to work on Shabbos, then it's still a data de nafshei. He's still doing it from his own accord. However, when it comes to a swimming pool, each day that the Goy doesn't work, I'm losing out on profit. Because each day there's a usage of the swimming pool, which the usage of a swimming pool is worth money. Every person has to pay 5 euros to get into the swimming pool. So each day that the swimming pool is not run, or each day that the swimming pool is run, there's profit and non-profit. So there's the Yid losing out. So you can't look at it like a field. However, when it comes to a field, even the Magen Avraham will agree that it might not be Asa Medina. It will not be Asa Medina to rent a Goy to rent him to do the job in kablonos. Because all I'm telling him to do is to take care of the job. When you do it, I don't care. You could do it in the middle of the night. It doesn't make a difference to me. You could do it any day in the week. You don't have to do it Shabbos. So therefore, he might say also it might not be Asa Medina. There may be a Maras Ayin, which we're not going to go into now, which is another subject. It could be there'll be a certain Maras Ayin by a field as well when it comes to kablonos. However, let's focus now on kablonos by a swimming pool, renting a Goy, a general idea of renting a Goy to do work for me on Shabbos, and I'm telling him, listen, all the profit is for me, and I'm going to pay you a monthly wage. Like we said, this case, there's a Machlokes Magen Avraham and Taz, whether it's Medina also, whether it's forbidden Medina. or it's only forbidden because of a maris ayin, that people will think it's a scheyim. The Shulchan Aruch tells us in Siman Reish Mem Daled, Seif Hey, Hilchos Shabbos, Orach Chaim, Siman Reish Mem Daled, Seif Hey. And I will share with you the Shulchan Aruch. Just 1 second, I'll share with you the Shulchan Aruch. Now, I'm not sure. For some reason, I'm having an issue sharing with the Shulchan Aruch, but I would like to continue because it's getting late. So the Shulchan Aruch in this case is very simple. I'll read it out to you from the Shulchan Aruch inside. The Shulchan Aruch tells us the following. In Reish Mem Daled Seif Hey, the Shulchan Aruch tells us the following. He says to us, Im Socha Eino Yehudi L'Shona. If you rented a goy, you rented a non-Jew for 1 year, or for 2 years, that he should be your scribe, he should write for you. Or he should weave a tailor. Unbelievable. The Shulchan Aruch says, and it's from a Rambam, and the Rambam tells us that if you rent a goy to do work for you on Shabbos, I rent him for an entire year. So that's literally our piece of Kabbalos. I've told him, you're my worker for the next year. Do work for me. And he says, I want you to be my scribe. Says the Shulchan Aruch, that's fine, it's mutter, it's permitted. As long as I make up a deal with him, I tell him, listen, you have to work for me for, let's say, like we said, 12,000 euros for a year, and you're my writer. That is permitted. Says the Shulchan Aruch further, there are people who forbid that, and it's actually the Raiva, there's Cholik on the Rambam, and he holds that is forbidden. Now, what exactly is the Shulchan Aruch talking about over here? There's 2 options that he can be talking about, and according to the Machloikas, according to the argument of Magen Avraham and Tav that we had before, both of them accordingly learn this case of the Shulchan Aruch, and they say that the Shulchan Aruch, according to their opinion, will be talking about the specific cases that we're going to discuss. So the Shulchan Aruch says, I'm allowed to rent a goy to do work for me. I'm telling him, you're my writer for the next year. So the Taz says that we're talking about a case where I'm telling him that I want you to do a specific amount of work for me the next year. For example, I tell him, I have a book, and I want this book to be written for me. I have a life story, a beautiful biography, and I want this biography to be written out for me. So I'm giving him work that takes 1 year. So the Taz says that's going to be permitted, just like by a bathhouse. I told you, just like when it came to a swimming pool, I told you that it's allowed Medina. I'm allowed to tell him to take care of the swimming pool, and all the profit is going to come to me. So too, says the Taz, I'm allowed to tell him to write for me a book that takes a year. And I'm going to pay you. He fixes with him a wage, tells him, listen, it's going to cost you a year of work. I'm going to pay you 12,000 euros to do it. Says the Taz, this is mutter Medina, just like with the swimming pool. However, says the Taz, I have a big advantage over here. There's no maris ayin. By the swimming pool, we mentioned that there's maris ayin because everyone knows that the swimming pool belongs to the Jew. So people will say, oh, the Jew has a goy, a non-Jew working for him. He's doing schar Shabbos. However, when it comes to this, says the Taz, there's no maris ayin. The goy takes the work, he goes to his personal office. No one knows who this work belongs to, and he does his own work. Therefore, says the Taz, that's why the Shulchan Aruch permitted it totally. Therefore, it's totally permitted. It's fully permitted. There's no maris ayin, no problems at all. However, says the Magen Avraham, I told you that by a bathhouse, by a swimming pool, if you get a goy to work for you for an entire year, or you tell him to work for you monthly, but you're taking all the profit for yourself, then there's a problem of schar Shabbos Medina, because every day that the goy doesn't work, you're losing out. And every day that the goy works, you are gaining. Says the Magen Avraham, in this case, that the goy has a whole year to do this work, and he needs the year to finish the work. He needs the year to do the biography. Says the Magen Avraham, every day the Yid is gaining from the work. So says the Magen Avraham to the Taz, I'm sorry, I can't fit in the Shulchan Aruch. I can't be moikim the Shulchan Aruch if we're talking about such a case, because it should be awesome midina. So that on the Taz's side, we could say that this case will be even mutter legamri, it will be completely mutter. There's not even a marasayin. However, when it comes to the Magen Avraham's way of looking at things, this case of the Shulchan Aruch will even be will be forbidden Medina, the other extreme, because he says, what do you mean? The Yid is gaining every single day. So says the Magen Avraham, I'm telling you that the Shulchan Aruch over here is talking about a case that the goy is a scribe of the Yid. And he says, like the minhag of the Malachim, the minhag of the kings, those days, I don't know, maybe people have that nowadays as well. They have a certain Jew who has a specific job. He's the scribe, he's the writer. So I didn't rent him to do a specific job. I never told him, listen, I have a whole biography to do for you. I only told him that you're my scribe and I'm renting you, I'm booking you for the next year. That if I have any writing that needs to get done, you'll be my writer. Says the Magen Avraham, even according to me, such a case will be mutter. Because since the goy doesn't have a schedule for the next year, so if I tell him on Friday, listen, I've got 2 documents that have to be written out for me. So the goy says, oh, that's great, I'll do that for you. Okay, I'll do that on Shabbos. Listen, I can't tell him to do on Shabbos. That's according to everyone. I can't command him to do on Shabbos. But even according to the Magen Avraham, when it came to a swimming pool and he said it's awesome Medina, he said in this case, it's the goy's own accord that he's doing it on Shabbos. Because really the goy can do it the next week. He can do it the whole time the next week. He's got a full week to do it. He doesn't have to do it today. That's why the Magen Avraham says that it will be, therefore the Shulchan Aruch explains to the Magen Avraham that the Shulchan Aruch will be talking about that case, and that case will be mutter Medina, even according to the Magen Avraham. And like we said, there's no Marasayan either, because he's doing the work in his own office, his own personal office, where no one has to know that the work's getting done. No one has to know that the work belongs to a Jew Bichlal, and therefore it's totally mutter, even according to the Magen Avraham in that case. In other words, we've got to say that the Taz is talking, the Taz's stress that the only way to make sure that it's going to be mutter is, it doesn't matter if I'm being marviach, I'm getting profit, the fact that he's doing the job. In other words, he needs 6 months to take care of this job, and he needs Shabbos, he needs the day of Shabbos to work. That doesn't matter. As long, says the Taz, I don't command him. I don't say, oh, you have to work on Shabbos. Then it might be an issue, because then I'm literally telling him, work for me on Shabbos. Then says the Taz, it'll be mutter. And what's the Magen Avraham stress? The Magen Avraham says, no, we have to make sure that the Yid is not even getting a revach. We have to make sure he's losing out on the profit, that he's not getting a revach by working on Shabbos. And that's why the Magen Avraham says that we have to be talking about a case where I haven't told him to do a work that's going to take 6 months. I've told him to do work that I've hired him as a scribe, I've hired him as a tailor. And when I have something that needs to get done, he'll do it. So he always has time. It's his own accord now that he actually goes and does it on Shabbos. It's totally from his own decision. He says, Shabbos is a good time for me. Shabbos I have off. Shabbos is my rest day, and I have it off and I'll do it. So the Taz's stress is, as long as there's no hakpoda, there's no makbid, I'm not makbid on him. And the Magen Avraham stress is even further. I have to make sure there's no revach, there's no profit. Right? However, the Ramah continues on this. The Ramah tells us that if I have a goy who's rented for me for all purposes, in our language, a secretary does everything for me. She makes my coffees, she writes for me, she sends my emails, she everything. She's running the office. Says the Ramah, that will be forbidden according to everyone. Because when I am telling a goy and I'm renting the goy to do all the work for me, says the Ramah, when I allow the secretary to work for me on Shabbos, by her working for me on Shabbos, like this, I'm gaining that she's going to have more time to work for me on Sunday. Because there's definitely going to be work for her to do on Sunday, because she does all my work. She's not just a scribe. It's not just a scribe or a tailor that does specific work for me. No, they do all sorts of work. Therefore, says the Ramah, that case is going to be forbidden according to everyone. All opinions will hold that it's forbidden. And in fact, this idea already comes from the Rabbijn. The Rabbijn already says, let's think about the Magen Avram's case. The Magen Avram says that the Shulchan Aruch permits it in a case where he's rented the goy to be a scribe, and he's not giving him a certain amount of work. He told him, whenever I need, be there for me. The Rabbijn says even that case is forbidden, because maybe on Sunday I'm going to get another letter, another document that suddenly comes, and I need the goy quickly to write it. And because the goy did the writing on Shabbos, now the goy, the non-Jew, has time to work for me on Sunday. Therefore, already the Rabbijn uses this svara to say that even that case will be forbidden. So the Ramah tells us, no, it could be that when it comes to that case where I've just rented the goy to be a scribe, to be a writer for me, then I don't have to be choshesh, I don't have to be worried so much that maybe on Sunday suddenly a document will come, and because the goy worked for me on Shabbos, therefore the goy has time now to write for me on Sunday. I don't have to be choshesh that. I can go with the tzad that it's permitted, it's mutter. However, when it comes to a secretary that does all the work, then says the Ramah, then we definitely have to be choshesh that you're going to have work for her to do on Sunday. And by the goy working for you on Shabbos, you're getting rid of a backlog. You're making sure there's no backlog for when the week starts after Shabbos. And that's why you're definitely gaining from Shabbos. So this is very simple. Going back to the couple of ideas that we mentioned at the beginning, it's very clear, and most posts can say that a secretary working for me is also, I'm not allowed to have a secretary working for me on Shabbos for this simple reason. And now we've understood it because there's a problem, there's a problem considering that which we see from Kablonos and we see it from Schirus, that a goy cannot do work for me on Shabbos, even though I'm giving her a monthly wage. And even though I'm not looking at every day, I'm not calculating every single day on its own, I'm looking on the entire month, still, we have an opinion that tells us sorry, it's not just an opinion, we have the Ramah that tells us that L'Kula Alma, there's a problem to get her to do work for me on Shabbos because she does all my work. She takes care of the entire office. And that's why I have to make sure that she doesn't do work on Shabbos for me. Because if I do let her work on Shabbos for me, I'm gaining a lot. I'm gaining that when the week starts, she'll have a lot of time to do other work. So that Bapashtas, in a simple way, will be forbidden. Now, let's go back to the cleaners. What about a cleaner? Seemingly, a cleaner is not...
Would it make a difference if she is working in my office or from her home?
Not when it comes to a secretary, because a secretary is working for you. It's not a problem of Maris Ayin.
Yeah.
It's a problem of Medina. She's doing work for you. You calculate, you're looking, she's seriously doing work for you. It may be, it could be that if you're going with, I have to think about it. It could be if you're going with there could be ways of getting out of it, but it's simply normally then she's doing work for me on Shabbos, and we have to be choshesh for the opinion of the Rabbijn. That, I mean, this is not just the Rabbijn, this is the Kula Alma. We have to be choshesh of this opinion that I'm gaining from the fact that she's going to have more time to work for me after Shabbos.
So that means I have instruct a secretary, I don't want you to do anything for me on Shabbos.
Oh, so that's a point that we haven't yet mentioned. But basically, it could be if I tell her clearly, do not work for me on Shabbos. Don't work for me. And I wrote it in the contract. Don't work for me on Shabbos. I mean, maybe you don't have to actually write it in the contract. Could be you can verbally make it up with her. Don't work for me on Shabbos. She goes and does it from herself. That's not my business. So we'll maybe mention that soon, but that could be okay. But simply, if I make up with a secretary, I cannot allow her to work on Shabbos. I have to tell her not to work on Shabbos. Rabbi Katz, can I continue?
Yeah. Just
I thought you said 1 minute, right?
No, we have to start this. We have to break off.
Yeah, I'm going to finish up now. I'm going to finish up
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
So I won't, because I didn't realize that. Yeah. So going back to the cleaners, when it comes to the cleaner, let's get to the practical side of it. The cleaner is a bit more difficult already, because the cleaner does a specific work for me in the house. She cleans up the house. She might do different types of cleaning. She's cleaning the dishes, she cleans the floor, she cleans all these things. It's more complicated. Then we have to take into consideration Machlokes Magen Avraham and the Taz. We have to make sure that, if she's doing work for me, then I have to get around Maras Ayin for starters. Never mind the Machlokes Magen Avraham and Taz, I have to get around Maras Ayin. So the thing is like this: if she's in my house, I can never tell her to clean the floor with me with a Hoover. I can't tell her to clean the floor for me with a sponge, which is schita, which is the Issa the rice on Shabbos, because there's a problem with Maras Ayin. So even before the Magen Avraham and Taz, I have a problem of Maras Ayin. And therefore, simply, you cannot tell a cleaner to do work for you which involves a malacha deraisa on Shabbos. However, if I'm just telling her to clean the dishes, that might be okay for me, because those are things that I can anyway do on Shabbos. But I want to just finish off. To get involved further in the Machlokes Magen Avraham and Taz in a practical way might also be negaya, but there isn't so much time for that. But I just want to finish off with one practical point, that it could be, and Rav Shlomo Zalman tells us this. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach tells us, passing this halacha, that it could be, you can even tell a cleaner to wash the dishes for me on Shabbos, and the cleaner goes and actually washes dishes with hot water. Why? Because in that case, says Rav Shlomo Zalman, there's no Maras Ayin. Even though she's in the house of the Yid, and everyone thinks she's doing it for the Yid with hot water, says Rav Shlomo Zalman, no. But everyone knows that there's a way to do it, a simple way to do it without hot water. Everyone knows there's a possibility to do it by cleaning it with cold water. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman, in that case, there's no Maras Ayin. So if I see the goy actually doing hot water, there's nothing to do with me. She's done it from her own accord. Based on the whole share that we're doing, based on all the Gemaras, based on all the Machlokes Magen Avraham and Taz, that will be fine, because at the end of the day, she's doing a malacha that really could be done al pi heta on Shabbos, and she's doing it from her own accord in a oifen ha'os, in a way of os, in the forbidden way. Therefore, it's not my business. However, you've got to make sure that, thinking about the Magen Avraham, this is the practical point that we need to get to. I'll just say it very quickly. Think about the Magen Avraham, that is always makbid on revach. So if I'm gaining from her, putting all the kalim, putting all my dishes into a dishwasher, and turning on a dishwasher, that might be a revach. So that might be a problem already on Shabbos. There may be, there could be ways of discussing that it could be mutter. There's something to think about. There's something to take into consideration. And we mentioned there's a Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham says there's a revach involved here, and therefore there might be a big problem of a revach when she does it in an oif and an osa. I do it in a forbidden way, and it takes her much quicker, and therefore I'm gaining that I have to pay her less. That might be a big problem. But simply, if she does it in the normal way, and she just does it with hot water, which takes the same amount of time, and I'm not gaining anything, it's just easier for her, that's her own accord. And Rav Shlomo Zalman says that's mutter because it's a data than afshay. Okay, we'll leave it for here today. Obviously, there's a lot more to discuss, but we'll leave it for here today. And shkoyach again to Rabbi Katz, shkoyach to you all. And we just have to remember that all these inyanim, the inyanim of Schar Shabbos, it's such a great, complex inyan, and there's so many details. We just saw a few little insights to the inyan of Schar Shabbos, how many different cases there could be, of different things, different nuances that you have to take into consideration. But the more we are careful, the more we make with Schar Shabbos, we'll always have the bracha. And we should all be zoicha to the bracha that the Navi says in Yeshaya, and Toshav Mishabbos Raglecha, if you rest from doing work on Shabbos, you rest your feet on Shabbos, Asois Chavsecha, from doing your business, doing work. The Karos on Shabbos Oineg says the Navi that the Navi promises you Oz T'sanag Hashem, then you'll have pleasure in Hashem, and you'll see bracha in all your mice and you'll see bracha, you'll see Panosa B'Shefa. The more a person is met with on Schar Shabbos, he makes sure that his business is run in a way that his workers don't work for him on Shabbos, and the workers, his secretary is not doing work for him on Shabbos, the more I'm sure he'll see bracha, and he'll have a shefa and panosa, and he'll see only good in his life. Shkoyach to everyone.
Shkoyach, Rav, dank u wel. Thank you.
I had to cut it short. If anyone wants to ask me questions, I can put my email in the chat.
Rav Katz, we horen je
Katz, je
niet.
staat op mute. Rav Katz, je staat nog op mute.
Doesn't hear us. Rav Katz, we don't hear you.
Je staat nog op mute.
Okay, again. So okay, the she wasn't said. Thank you, Frank, for Israel, for Pertikva. The she wasn't said, but kablonos and beschiras and beschayom. But said, mamash, but the divas life. Thank you so much. It was beautiful and was really a testimony to the gewaltige things the Koil is doing here. You should be so good to go Michael Koil and just and to become a greater Rabbit's Torah, a greater Koich. And now we are waiting now for Dan Gelly. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. And Zay Matzliach, Rabbi Bol.